Good morning, everyone. If I could ask everyone to please take their seats. We are going to get started momentarily. We have a packed agenda today, and we want to make sure we stay on time, as I'm sure that is important to you as well. Okay, great. Well, as you're taking your seats, I'll get started with some opening remarks. Hold on one sec. All right. Good morning. I am so grateful and excited to welcome you to our 2023 Wellness and Epilepsy Conference. I am privileged to know many of you, but for those I don't know yet, my name is Brianna Romines, and I'm honored to serve as president for the Epilepsy Foundation of Michigan. I've had the honor of being a part of the foundation for nearly 20 years, hard to believe, and this community, the epilepsy community, never ceases to amaze me. Now, I want to thank each and every one of you for gathering here with us today. We have so much wonderful information for you, and I am confident that you will leave here today having learned something new. This is an exciting time for all of us to be together. It's the perfect way in our mind to celebrate National Epilepsy Awareness Month. Now, without you, we would not have dedicated forums of epilepsy awareness, education, and advocacy. And this year, we have the special honor of celebrating the 75th anniversary of the Epilepsy Foundation of Michigan, and I'm going to cue a little applause over that. Together, we can break barriers and create lasting change for many, many years to come. All right, so let's take action together in November. In honor of Epilepsy Awareness Month, there's many ways that you can get involved. Now, throughout the day, you will learn about these opportunities, and we also encourage you to scan the QR code that is on the sign in the center of every table to learn about the ways that you can partner with us to raise epilepsy awareness. Now, with gratitude, I would like to take a moment and thank our generous sponsors that have helped to make today possible. Our lead outreach sponsor, Henry Ford Comprehensive Epilepsy Program. Yep, let's do it. Our Health and Resource Fair sponsor, Michigan Medicine and C.S. Mott Children's Hospital Department of Neurology. Our session sponsor, Children's Hospital of Michigan. Our community partners, Corewell Health and UCB. Our wellness partners, Jazz Pharmaceutical, Catalyst Pharmaceutical, and Neurelis. All right, and all of our network partners, our display booth partners, our amazing volunteers. Let's give all of them a big round of applause right now. And new this year, in an effort to become even more disability accessible, we would like to draw your attention and thank our American Sign Language interpreters that have volunteered their time to join us today for this general session. April Davidson, Lynn Thomas, and Reese Davis, thank you. Now, to start our day and introduce our keynote speaker, I'd like to welcome Angie May, the chair of our board of directors, to the stage.
Thank you, Brianna, and good morning, everyone, and welcome. My name is Angie May, and I'm honored to serve as the board chairperson for the Epilepsy Foundation of Michigan. It is my pleasure to welcome all of you to the 2023 Wellness and Epilepsy Conference. As you may already know, there are around 3.4 million people diagnosed with epilepsy in the United States, and 1 in 26 will receive a diagnosis of epilepsy during their lifetime. This statistic is particularly powerful to me as my 2 daughters, Madison and Ashlyn, are living with an epilepsy diagnosis. Like so many of you joining us today, I share in our collective vision of utilizing tools, resources, and education in order to overcome the challenges of living with epilepsy. Education has always been the primary tool that we believe can change lives and outcomes of people living with epilepsy. We are honored to be able to showcase the amazing speakers that we have lined up for you today and to hold this event in a very special month, National Epilepsy Awareness Month. Now it is with great pleasure that I introduce this morning's speaker. We are so fortunate to have her with us today. In July 2023, B. Martin Lee began serving as the new CEO of the National Epilepsy Foundation. In her role as CEO, she brings her personal history with epilepsy, her comprehensive understanding of nonprofit management, as well as her profound commitment to health equity and the social impact. She has more than 25 years of diverse experience in the nonprofit and healthcare sectors, including Ohio Health, the Ohio State University Wexner Medical Center, American Red Cross, Hands On Network, and the Association for Children and Adults with Learning Disabilities. Throughout her career, she has excelled at securing major gifts and driving growth through thoughtful program development, stakeholder engagement, and strong organizational models. Most recently, she served as the Senior Philanthropy Advisor at Ohio Health, the largest healthcare system serving Central Ohio. B. Martin Lee holds an undergraduate degree in social science from Gagnon University in Erie, Pennsylvania, and certifications in frontline fundraising and educational policy. She and her husband, Philip R. Lee, live in Westerville, Ohio, and have 3 adult children. She is an active board member of the Columbus Discovery District and Ohio Association for Healthcare Philanthropy. Most recently, the Urban League of Columbus recognized B as a Her Story Maker 2023. I'm so honored to welcome to the stage. Please join me in welcoming our new national CEO, B. Martin Lee.
Handheld mic by any chance?
Yes, we can grab you one of those.
Good morning. I asked for a handheld mic because I'm a walker, so standing behind the podium would have been difficult for me. Thank you for having me this morning. This is an amazing group of individuals gathered this morning to talk about epilepsy. I'm going to start my conversation with my own personal story. I was diagnosed with epilepsy at age 19 during my sophomore year in college. I had a clonic-tonic seizure on my way to class. I was taken to the emergency room and told that it was just because of stress and it would never happen again. How many of you had that experience? Oh, it was just stress. So many hands. My second seizure came at home that following spring with my family over Easter dinner. I am Afro-Cuban from a very large family. I woke up to my dear abuela putting holy water in my face. But my mother, a nurse, immediately recognized that it was a seizure, took me to the emergency room, and advocated on my behalf that what I was not experiencing was out of stress, but something more. But I was then told it was a psychogenic seizure. I had 5 more seizures before I was diagnosed with epilepsy, all dismissed as something else. When I reached the diagnosis of epilepsy, I began to see a general neurologist because I did not know the word epileptologist, right? I did not know that word. And I was placed on Dilantin and given a brochure and sent home and said, we will see you in 6 months. Without information, without a resource, without an organization like the Epilepsy Foundation, I did not do well on Dilantin. I went back into my neurologist's office 6 months later, and I didn't have the language to say what I was feeling, but I knew what was happening wasn't working for me. I was teaching high school at the time, sleeping 16 hours a day because of the medication. And his response was, have your seizures subsided? Yes. Well, the medication's working. but what we can do is place you on long-term disability. I was 24 years old. I had no idea what that word meant. I asked questions. Well, what does that mean? Is this what my diagnosis means for me? And his response was, well, this won't be difficult because I'm sure you're on some other type of assistance. I went home confused, angry, frustrated, and asked my mother again, is this what my diagnosis means for me? Is this the rest of my life? She said, well, we can talk to someone else. I found a new neurologist who placed me on a new medication, who helped me understand my diagnosis and the cause of it. It changed my life. However, almost 25 years later, there's still people in our community that are dealing with what I dealt with 25 years ago. That is why I'm in this role, because I deeply understand the stigma, the bias, and the lack of resources of information for individuals living with epilepsy. So I'm going to talk about a young woman. There we go. A young woman, Miss Jackie. Miss Jackie is 64 years old. She is a mother and grandmother and widow. Miss Jackie was laid off from the phone company prematurely when her job was automated. Miss Jackie lives in a home that she's owned for the last 25 years in a blighted community. She does not have her own transportation and relies on public transportation. Because of the layoff and the absorption of her pension, she has limited resources. Miss Jackie lives with epilepsy. She was diagnosed after the age of 50. She finds it very difficult to get to her appointments because of transportation. And while her son is extremely active and supportive, she's a prideful woman, and she doesn't want to burden him with her problems. So sometimes she just doesn't go to her appointments. There are often times, because she is on Medicaid, that she has to make the decision about her medication. Can I stretch this just a few more days? Because of that, she has found herself in the ED on several occasions because she has stretched her medication. She doesn't see a neurologist. She sees a primary care physician for her care, who often doesn't understand the needs that she has living with epilepsy. And because of that, she has fallen into depression on many occasions. Why do we talk about Miss Jackie? Because she is living in the margins. And what we do at the Epilepsy Foundation is we design for the margins, because we know designing for the margins uplifts all of us in the community. So I may need to bring Ashlyn up with me. Sit there, Ashlyn, just wait a second, because I'm about to get really nerdy, right, in my statistics. I love a good statistic. So, if you need some cuteness while I'm talking, just look at Ashlyn. She'll relieve you of my nerdiness and of the statistics I'm about to go through. So Ashlyn, be on standby, because I might need you. So today we're going to talk about the statistics that impact Miss Jackie's life and how we got here. Half of the world's population lacks access to essential health services. Half of the world's population lacks access to essential health services. This presentation was put together with my partner, Dr. Lydia Mora, Associate Professor out of Harvard University. 50 to 70 million people worldwide live with epilepsy. Think about that. 50 to 70 million people worldwide live with epilepsy. In the US, 1.2 of the total population live with epilepsy. 3.4 million individuals, 470 children live with epilepsy in the United States. Remember those numbers, 3.4. When we look at inpatient emergency room visits, those living with epilepsy, and I wish, does this have a pointer on it? I don't know. No, it doesn't. Okay. I tried. Maybe I'll just walk over. So as we look at the statistics, right? Without epilepsy is about a little over 5 million. With epilepsy is about 46,000. That's the population worldwide. I mean, within the country, particularly Arizona we're talking about. People without epilepsy have emergency room visits of a little over 2 million, right? 409 on average. And then if we look at the primary and secondary diagnosis of epilepsies with seizures, it's almost triple that who visit the ED. Almost triple that of an individual not living with epilepsy. If we go even further into that statistic, out of those living with epilepsy, those particularly that are visiting the ED are in the Medicare and Medicaid category. What we do know is that the United States is an outlier on pharmaceutical spending worldwide. We spend at the highest amount per person in developing countries, or developed countries, I apologize. On average, we spend about $1,000 plus on unreimbursed cost of medication. Those are people with insurance are still spending over $1,100 a year. Adults who cited cost of reasons for skipping prescriptions or doses, again, in the developed world, the United States is number one. Do you need a break? Should I bring Ashlyn up? Are you okay? All right, just let me know when you need her. I'll bring her on up. Adults who cited cost of the reason for skipping their prescriptions or doses, again, United States is number one. Those who have 2 or more chronic diseases, much higher, almost triple. So we look at the trends in average spending. The average population on the low end is less than 5,000. Living with epilepsy on the low end is about 15,000. On the high end, we're a little over 9,000 for those living without epilepsy, almost $25,000 for those living with epilepsy. And then we look at the prescription cost. Again, on the low end, average, that 181,000 that we talked about earlier. For epilepsy, it's between 3,500 and 3,700. Highest rate above 6,000 for someone living with epilepsy. Healthcare spending was $4,580 higher among people living with epilepsy for prescription drugs, outpatient care, and average out-of-pocket cost. From 2010 to 2018, the growth rate in total spending occurred by persons with epilepsy was 10.5 in comparison to 4.3 among matching controls. Double in our community. And you can see the numbers. For almost $25 billion for epilepsy or seizures was spent in the United States. Again, anyone need Ashlyn before I go any further? Just want to make sure. So we know, what does that statistic tell us? What does all that information tell us? It is expensive to live with epilepsy. It is expensive to live with epilepsy. So let's talk about another marker of age. We know in our community Those who are most affected by epilepsy are children and individuals over 50. While anyone can develop epilepsy at any time in their lives, that is where we see it being most prevalent, in children and individuals over 50. So let's talk about population as we talk about adults. We know that our population is aging, right? So this chart here shows us the heat spots where population is over the age of 65, dark purple being over 65, right? What we see in the neurology supply is that there's a demand of over 20% for neurology care in the United States. Lay these two on top, we do not have enough neurology care in the United States for the aging population. So we've talked about epilepsy is expensive. As you get older, there's not enough care, right? We know this to be true. Really not even as you get older, there's just not enough care across the country for anyone. So then we talk about the percentage of people with epilepsy with barriers, right? What we see here is that more than 20% of the population across the board says they have barriers to their care. But particularly in the African American community, it is 61% who say they have barriers. 61%. And then we ask the question, does that barrier include medication adherence? Over 38% said that barrier includes medication adherence. So we ask the question, if your seizures are well controlled, what is your mental health, right? So let's talk about, so what we've talked about is medication, it's expensive. High rate of people who are not adherent to their medication. What are your barriers? Is one of those mental health. What we saw for people who reported that they were having barriers, not medical adherence, is that they had a higher rate of depression and anxiety. So there was a study done specifically with Hispanic women who scored a baseline of 14 on their anxiety and depression ratings. When we asked the question, what was their access to providers, it was 2. 2 providers were available to them in their community. We asked that same question to a non-Hispanic community. Their baseline screening was 3 for mental health, and they had an average of 20 providers. Again, do I need to bring Ashlyn up? Am I losing anybody? I told you I was a little nerdy. So do I need to liven this up? Do I need to joke at this point? Everybody okay with me? Okay, let's move on. Okay, good. So what we see is Blacks and Hispanic patients have more inpatient use of emergency visits than white non-Hispanic patients. Black and Hispanic and Native American patients have a higher prevalence of epilepsy. Non-white groups have higher incidence of status epilepticus, which we know can lead to SUDEP. So what is the foundation doing about this, right? First, we had to frame the problem. We had to understand what was happening in the margins, which we just defined through data, right? That individuals, particularly those in underserved communities, are having trouble paying for their medication, which leads to them being medication non-adherent, which leads to higher inpatient and ED visits, which also leads to higher rates of mental health issues. Those are the margins. So how do we address it? How would you address it, right? We made the priority of equity our number one priority this year because we recognize that until we provide equitable services across the country for individuals living with epilepsy, we will continue to see people living in the margins. So our goal is to be recognized as a leader in health equity, particularly for those living with epilepsy. And we do that by making sure that we are raising more resources to support those living with epilepsy to provide greater equity. We also want to expand our network. Why is that important? We need more people in the tent to help understand the problem and to help solve it. And we also want to improve health outcomes because what we learned from the statistics was what? Better seizure control leads to better outcomes. So we have to help individuals reach seizure control, whether that's through medication adherence or whether that's through surgical intervention. Both have to be made available to the community. And again, I know I have a lot of, they're in the other room, but my Teen Speak Up individuals are in the other room, but we would do it also through advocacy, because when we talk about the cost of medication, we have to talk about how we advocate at the federal, state, and local level to bring those costs down. Remember, living with epilepsy is expensive. And then lastly, we lead with data. Again, I'm a nerd, fully admit it. But in order to tell our story, we have to know through quantifiable and qualitative studies what we're facing and what the unmet needs of our community are. So we have designed the Epilepsy Learning Healthcare System. It is a project, first of its kind. Did I say that? First of its kind. That helps us understand, by working with epilepsy centers and collecting information, what the unmet needs are of our community. But it doesn't only help us understand the problem. It's going to help us provide quality care initiatives that service that community. How does that happen? This is a closed loop network, meaning that the epilepsy centers that participate right now at 16 have agreed that they are going to make referral back to social service agencies, including the Epilepsy Foundations, to provide wellness services and wraparound services so that we can address those issues. Remember, there's a clinical, and then there's how we live, right? Our epilepsy centers can address the clinical, but we still need support in how we live and how we live well, managing those stressors, addressing social determinants of health. We need our social service agencies to do that. In that closed loop, we report that information back to the epilepsy center of how we're helping to address those social determinants of health. Our goal is to begin to systemize this approach. Think about diabetes. If you are diagnosed with diabetes and you walk into a diabetes center, you're not only giving your clinical care, but also your lifestyle care, right? You're giving a dietitian, you're giving mental health support, addressing social determinants of health support. We want to create that same system for epilepsy, for every individual living with epilepsy. So far, we have over 17,000 individuals in the registry, and that was with 9 centers as of 2023. This is growing exponentially, and we're really, really glad about that. At the Epilepsy Foundation, we have created a data lake so that we're able to absorb this information and actually share it with our partners in the field. So one, we can come about better treatment options, but also address those unmet needs. And some people say, Miss Jackie's not me. I don't live with these issues, right? This is not me. We were designing from the fringes. designing from the margins. But many of you are saying, these are not my issues. I don't have these issues. Why are we talking about this? I'm really not concerned about it. This is why. Has anybody ever heard of the curb cut effect? I saw a hand up. Several. This is how we're basing our model, is on the curb cut effect. The curb cut effect essentially said, when we designed the curb cut for the disabled, it provided better services for everyone in the community. And we are hoping to do the same. I'm happy to answer any questions if there are some from the audience. Any questions? Anything I can help you understand with the Epilepsy Foundation of America? I'm so transparent. Anything about my personal story, I'm really open to anything. Yes, sir. Yes. Oh.
Raise your hand.
I was ready to take action.
So how many medications have you been on throughout your entire life?
That is a question, right? So I am seizure-free. I've been seizure-free since 2015. I have been on 3 that I remember. Dilantin, Tegretol, and Lamictal. But I know I have been on a series of trials that did not work. Those are the 3 that brought me to control. Lamictal was the one that brought me to control. But that's an interesting question, and I answer it because I'm seizure-free and I was weaned off of medication about 3 years ago. I recently went to my neurologist because my lifestyle has changed. I'm traveling more. I'm not getting as much sleep. We all know these triggers, right? I often face dehydration. And I said, I need a rescue medication. And I was told, you don't need that. You don't need that. And I had to be able to advocate for myself of why I needed it, right? My lifestyle has changed. I recognize that my triggers are more prevalent in my life. And, not to disclose my age, but I'm becoming menopausal. All triggers in epilepsy. But I was told I did not need the rescue medication. Now, after I laid it all out of why I needed it and why this was important for me, I actually received the prescription, but I know it's very difficult for individuals to access that medication. So I ask that advocate for yourself, because rescue medication is an important part of the community being able to reach seizure control. And in emergency, you need that medication, right? We know that it can possibly cut the seizure in half time, but also you have a quicker recovery time. Any other questions? Some up here. I think they're up here. Oh, back there, okay.
Hi. In regards to transportation issues for individuals, can you speak to that? Is the foundation have any partners, or specifically for our area, Metro Detroit? I don't know.
Sure. I cannot speak to Metro Detroit specifically, but I will talk with Brianne. But we do have a partnership with Uber for transportation. We do provide Uber vouchers for individuals who are having issues around transportation, and you can call the EF hotline if you're in need of those vouchers.
Oh, sorry. I wanted to know, could you go back to the one with race? Because that's one thing I'm trying to improve the minority community on epilepsy, because I've recently started a YouTube page to introduce epilepsy to the Black community in service dogs.
Okay.
And I go through U of M for, my neurologist is actually here. But that's one thing I'm trying to get more of my people to know about epilepsy, like what it is, the different types. Because like me, I have grand mal, petite complex partial seizures. I can have one just quietly
Yes.
or shaking. So I wanted to take a picture of that and
Sure.
see, should be able to show that to the people.
Right.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it's so important. Over 40% of those living with epilepsy are from brown and black communities. Over 40% of individuals living with epilepsy are from brown and black communities. And you're absolutely right. It is a hidden disease disorder in communities of color. For many reasons, but particularly around stigma.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I have a follow-up to that question around transportation.
Sure.
So, for those of us who don't, for instance, have access to Uber. So for instance, while I was pregnant, I could not get to my medical providers because I live in a space where Uber does not serve, and even though there is the policy around giving access for people with disabilities and the elderly, they only did a small radius. And I work in social services, I work in advocacy, and we know social services, there's a gap in it. What kind of policy work are we doing, or can we do? I'm into being active myself. Because that is local policy, it's statewide, it's national. So both what are we doing, and then for those of us who want to be activists, what can we do?
Well, I'm gonna answer your question backwards, if that's okay. I invite you to be an Epilepsy Foundation ambassador. It is part of our advocacy program, and it's where we need your voice and we need your support. So that's what you can do. That's a great question. In hard to reach places, we know these social determinants of health exist. We have studied a program in Alabama, particularly Birmingham. It's called Ride Alabama. And they have provided transportational services at $1.50 per trip for anyone in the community, right? Anyone in the community can access this. It runs very much like Uber. And it also reaches some of their hard to reach places outside of the Birmingham city. That is a program that we need to duplicate across the country, right? We need advocates to begin to talk about it as an unmet need in our community. Like you said, Uber does not exist everywhere. Lyft does not exist everywhere. But if the city mandates or the county mandates, rides at very nominal fees for individuals to reach their care providers, that would change the landscape. So that's how we can work on that issue together.
Yeah. You mentioned full disability earlier. So it's difficult for someone that is on disability to then come out of disability and then into the workforce and then start trying to have their own place or get out of their caretakers.
Yeah.
It's something that's not so easy to do here in the States.
Mm-hmm.
Is there some sort of stepping step program that the foundation has?
So workforce development is on our horizon. You're absolutely right. How do we allow individuals to have the dignity and respect of employment and independence, right? That's what we all strive for. How do we begin to do that? And it's through workforce development. But if you are having those challenges today and you're looking for solutions, I would ask that you contact the Epilepsy Foundation of America, our Legal Defense Fund, because we can help you. We can at least give you a plan to make that happen using accommodations. Hi. Hi.
Hi. I wanted to ask you, throughout your life having seizures from a little girl growing up, becoming a beautiful woman.
Aw, you're so sweet.
Thank you. Did you ever have any grand mal seizures and your doctor telling you that the medicines that you're taking aren't working. So the last thing that we can do is to give you brain surgery.
Yes, I have not experienced that myself. My seizures became well controlled with medication, but we know a third of the population are not able to achieve seizure control through medication. We do know that. And surgical interventions are an option that you should explore. And they are safe and they are effective. So if that has been a recommendation by your physician, I would explore it because they are safe and they are effective. Yes.
How would you define a comprehensive epilepsy program?
Okay. Okay. Thank you. Comprehensive epilepsy program would mean that we're taking a look at the mind, the body, and the spirit. That would be comprehensive to me. And when we talk about wellness, it has to encompass all three as well. I don't know if that's really is that the question you were really asking me, or do you need something a little deeper from me?
You mentioned the diabetes and the full care.
Yes.
And I think that's kind of parallel, isn't it?
Yes, very much so. Very much so. And more importantly, it's one stop, right? You're not having to go place to place to place to get to access that care. It's in one place for you. And that's what we're trying to achieve as well.
Sorry. I have a question. What do you suggest for like fall detection and SUDEP at night?
Right. So the real risk, right, that raises our anxiety and that we have to address. So right now, Minnesota has passed a bill for coverage for all seizure detective devices. We are looking to scale that across the country so that everyone can have access through their insurance companies to have it covered for seizure detection devices. We are actively working in our research department to bring new treatments and devices to market. We have a program called Shark Tank where we entertain those information and we provide grants so that we can get better opportunities for seizure control and to detect seizures, to prevent falls and other injuries. So we are working towards that, but right now it's most importantly that we work towards the policy that those devices that are currently on the market, you are able to access with any insurance.
Is it common for like a neurologist not to know where your seizures came from?
It is. It is. I was with a neurologist yesterday. Some people, have you been on a epilepsy monitoring unit? Okay. And they never showed up. I was the same way. It happened. I know exactly what you mean. That my seizures never showed up on the EEG. Some reason I would have a seizure right before or right after, right? But never during the time I was hooked up. But that is common. It's actually very common to not be able to triangulate where the seizure is coming from.
I have two just to tack on to the transportation issue.
Mm-hmm.
My son is 21 and he's living, or almost 22, he's living in an assisted living facility in rural Kent County. And there is plenty of transportation for seniors. There's, but because he's younger, he cannot access transportation.
Yeah.
So that part is really difficult. Senior neighbors will drive people everywhere, but there's not transportation available for him because of his age, and that's very difficult. So that's one part that is, the transportation issue is huge for him. He can't drive. He's had 3 epilepsy surgeries, so and he'll never be able to drive. But my other question is, in Ohio, I think has done a good job on this, but Michigan has not. I think we need to do work on allowing people who have had surgeries and who have had issues to be able to be classified as TBI instead of just acquired brain injury. Because there's no equity in acquired brain injury. And, you know, my son is missing, he's missing a third of his brain, almost a half of his brain.
Yes.
And he qualifies for nothing because it's not TBI, because it's surgical.
Yeah. Yeah.
So how do we change that?
It's through policy. And I'm so sorry that you're facing these barriers, truly. But again, as we talked about the transportation model in Birmingham, because that transportation model was not developed for those with disabilities, but for the entire community, right? So it erased many barriers, such as age. So we need to continue to work towards those type of policies across the country that allow anyone to access transportation. But again, regarding TBI, it's policy, it's advocacy. And I encourage you to work with the Epilepsy Foundation of Michigan to talk about those issues, because they have an amazing advocacy program here. And sharing that information and helping us understand what the unmet needs are is really important. So thank you for your vulnerability and for your courage to talk today.
Hi, Bernice.
Hi.
Nice to see you again. I have a two-part question.
Sure.
One, what is the Epilepsy Foundation of America doing for caregivers, for people who care for those with epilepsy? And my second part of my question is, I want your opinion personally. At one point in your life, you had a caregiver. What do you wish that they knew or understood, and what did you expect out of them?
That's a great question. We were actually just having this conversation at our table about caregivers. So one, we understand that epilepsy is a family issue, right? We absolutely understand that. And at the Epilepsy Foundation, we do offer support groups for families. But we need to do more regarding resources and opportunities for families to be involved. So particularly with Teen Speak Up, we invite the parent because we need that family advocacy as well. We need that caregiver perspective as we develop policy and advocacy on the Hill. But we need to broaden that. I would absolutely agree. My personal story, I've been married to my wonderful husband for 30 years. We have 3 adult children now. He has been my primary caregiver. What I wish he would have had was not to keep it a secret. That's what I wish he would have had. I kept it a secret. So he had to keep it a secret, which meant he couldn't get the support he needed because he couldn't talk about it, right? So oftentimes when I was unable to function, she has a migraine, right? But he had to witness the seizure. And the trauma that he lives with in witnessing multiple clonic-tonic seizures by his wife was traumatic, and he had no one to talk to, no one to share that information with. My children became caregivers just because they were in the home, right? I always tell the story, I have a son, he's 19. He's 6'4", 300 pounds. Plays college ball. His game is about to start. And my husband and I now joke that when we talk about seizure recognition and seizure first aid, we needed that for him when he was growing up, because when I would have a clonic-tonic seizure, he would run to another part of the house and call 911 because he was trying to protect his mother. And as many times as we told him, please do not call 911, do not do that, he was like, hey, I learned in school if there's an emergency that I need to call 911. But I recognized that was his trauma response. Something is happening to his mother, right? I was sharing my oldest daughter, is in her 4th year of residency for general surgery. And even now, her trauma response is there because as I travel across the country, I get the phone call, "Mom, are you sleeping enough? Are you hydrated?" To the point, this child has found a way to hook my Outlook calendar to her Google Calendar. So she will know where I'm at all times. She has found a way. She took my phone one day. I didn't know what she literally now knows whenever I'm in an Uber, right? But that's her trauma response of, I don't want my mother to be somewhere and have a seizure and be by herself, right? So what I would have wished for them as they grew up was someone to talk to them about that trauma. And me and Ashlyn said, because people want to look after you when you have a seizure, like, right, Ashlyn, they want to look, they hover around you. But that's what I would have wanted from my family. Thank you for the question. I appreciate that.
B, I think we have one more question.
Okay.
Okay, hello. My name is Adero. And I would say maybe half of the seizures that I have are at nighttime in the bed.
Mm-hmm.
And I chew my tongue. You wake up to a bloody pillow, and that's no fun. So is there some type of mouth guard that you could sleep with? Or, because I'll be wanting to use like a sports mouth guard,
Yes.
but you're not really supposed to sleep with nothing
in your mouth. Yeah.
But something to protect your tongue.
So
is something coming up?
It's so funny you asked that. Actually, I have a meeting in a few weeks with an inventor who has developed something that can go in the mouth safely in the time of seizure that will be able to, that looks very much like a retainer that protects the tongue at night, because she is someone living with epilepsy and has faced the same issues. Now, we are at the very beginning stages of that conversation, and she will still have to move that through FDA approval. But there is development in that area because many people have faced that issue and they are trying to solve for it. And I can connect you to her because she is looking for people to put into the study as well. So if there are any more questions, I really thank you for your time. I thank you for your interest. And I thank Brianne for inviting me here today to have this conversation. Thank you.
Oh. Wow. B, thank you so much. It is an honor to have you here with us and just to hear your story and for you to share everything that you've shared with us today. I know that that has changed lives in this room, so thank you so much. In token of our gratitude for you being here with us today, this is a token of our appreciation, and we hope that this serves as a reminder of the lives that you've touched today. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ashlyn, for being my backup today.
She's there for you anytime you need her. All right, let's give B. Martin Lee one more round of applause. Well, B has certainly set the stage for the remainder of this conference, and we are so grateful for her to be here with us today. And now I'm pleased to welcome to the stage Renee Roederer, our Community Care Director for the Epilepsy Foundation of Michigan. She's going to introduce the next speakers. Thank you so much.
Good morning. It is such a pleasure to be gathered with everyone this morning, and I now have the pleasure of introducing our next speakers as well. We are grateful to share that this general session is sponsored by Michigan Medicine, and it's entitled Breaking Barriers in Epilepsy Research and Therapies. Dr. Nusha Mihalova is an epileptologist for adults at Michigan Medicine, and Dr. Garnet Smith is a pediatric epileptologist at Michigan Medicine's C.S. Mott Children's Hospital. So we will hear their presentations and then conclude with 10 minutes of your questions. So it's a pleasure to have Dr. Mihalova and Dr. Smith with us, so let's give them a warm welcome. Good morning.
Good morning, everyone. I'm really excited to be here. I have already seen some familiar faces in the audience, and that makes it even more exciting. I'm really honored and humbled to be here in front of you and to have the opportunity to talk about new pharmacotherapies for epilepsy. Let's see if I can navigate this. Yes. So, epilepsy is this enduring predisposition of the brain to generate seizures, a condition that carries a lot of neurobiological, cognitive, psychological, and social consequences. Epilepsy is very common, as you know. It is the fourth most common neurological disorder. It affects more than 3 million Americans and more than 52 million people in the world.